Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be another missing persons case, and it's on the disappearance of Melinda McGhee. Melinda was born on June 3rd, 1971 and was the second oldest of 4 siblings. Her younger sister said that she was the peacemaker between her and her siblings. She was a cheerleader when she was in middle school and high school. And after graduating high school, she got married and moved down to Mississippi. She went to school to be a nurse and was an LPN for many years before deciding to go back to school to become an RN, a registered nurse. And she was going to finish her schooling in May of 2003, but unfortunately, she never got to see that graduation day. According to many former coworkers, she was a great worker and she was always so kind and fun-loving and the most hardworking person that you'd ever know. She loved her boys and her husband, and she would constantly talk about them. Her and her husband, Troy McGhee, were happily married for 7 years, and they had 2 sons together, as well as Troy having a son from a previous marriage. They were, by all accounts, happy and in love, and everything seemed to be going great for them. They lived in a rural area of Alabama down a small dirt road where it was so rural that there's only 3 other houses on the road. March 24th, 2003 was like any other day. Melinda was working at a nursing home in Bay Minette, Alabama. She worked nights, so at about 7 a.m. she was driving home from work. She stopped at a gas station when she got into town and got some gas and then went home. By the time that she got home from work, her husband Troy was already at work and had dropped off their 2 sons at their babysitter. Troy came home at about 4 p.m. that day after picking the boys up, and unfortunately the boys ran into the house first and came back out and said that they had seen blood. And so Troy ran into the house to see what was going on and saw that there was clearly a struggle that happened in the house and there was blood. And he searched for Melinda and couldn't find her anywhere. Her car was there, her keys were actually in the car, and her cell phone and her purse and everything were in the home still. So he immediately was concerned at this site and called the cops right away. Police knew from the very beginning that something was wrong, and they started their investigation right away. Several different agencies helped out the county police. There were various local police departments as well as the FBI that got involved in this case. They looked into every aspect of Melinda's life. They looked at what she did in her free time, who she talked to, who she hung out with, where she went to church, where she got her hair done. And these investigators would end up speaking with and interviewing hundreds of people who Melinda would have been in contact with or been around, and nothing ever really went anywhere with any of these interviews. In early March of 2009, authorities searched an area off of Perry Lane in Waubeke for clues in Melinda's disappearance, and nothing was found. With the help of these different agencies, they searched a gravel pit that was full of water in Escambia County after receiving a tip. It's on the border of Atmore and Porridge. They brought cadaver dogs to aid in the search and sonar equipment, but nothing was found. Also in 2009, the Escambia County Sheriff's Department used cadaver dogs to search a septic tank on Ewing Farm Road, about 5 miles northwest of Atmore, and nothing was found there either. They've used ground-penetrating radar in some of these searches as well as, like I mentioned earlier, the cadaver dogs and the sonar equipment. And they followed up on every lead and nothing has come about. The county sheriff's office is offering a $10,000 reward, and the family offered another $5,000 on top of that. 7 years after Melinda had gone missing, there were still no answers to where she was or what happened to her, and a death certificate was officially issued for Melinda in 2010. This case is hard because it was such a rural area, and so there weren't a lot of people that could be witnesses to what happened. And because it's such a rural area, there's not as many people to investigate. But then once you rule out the likely people, then they really don't have a lot to go on. They've interviewed people multiple times just to see if they recall anything else that they may have missed in the initial interviews, and still no real leads have gotten investigators any further. But that leaves some theories. So there are a few different theories with this case, and they're about different serial killers that could have possibly been responsible for Melinda's disappearance. So the investigators have said from basically the beginning, as well as after exhausting all of the potential ways that it could have been something besides foul play, investigators are certain that Melinda is no longer alive and that this was foul play and this is a murder investigation at this point in time. Now, let's take a look at both of these serial killers. Many people on web sleuths believe that Derrick Todd Lee is likely responsible, so let's talk about him first. Derrick Todd Lee was born in November of 1968, making him 29 years old at the time he committed his first murder on April 18, 1998, and 34 when he committed his last murder on March 13, 2003. At first, police didn't look at Derrick Todd Lee as a suspect of these 7 murders that he would ultimately be found guilty of, because they believed the killer was Caucasian. Unfortunately, this allowed there to be more victims. DNA evidence matched Lee to the murders of 7 different women in the Baton Rouge, Louisiana area, and in 2004 he was convicted of the murders of Geraldine DeSoto and Charlotte Marie Pace. These were 2 separate trials, and the trial of the murder of Charlotte Marie Pace resulted in the death sentence. But he would end up dying on January 21st, 2016 of heart disease at a Louisiana hospital. So there are a few different reasons of why people believe that Lee could be responsible for Melinda's disappearance and death. One is that he was active during the time that Melinda went missing. The last of the 7 known victims of Derrick Todd Lee was killed on March 13th of 2013, which was a little over a week before Melinda went missing. Lee has been arrested for stalking women and watching them in their homes before committing the murders. This could possibly make a connection with Melinda if he possibly had noticed her another point in time and then had stalked her and knew what her routine was and knew that when she was home alone that day that she went missing, that she would be home alone basically the whole day. Melinda also matched his victim type, and her home was not too far from the area that he committed his murders. Some sources say that he was apprehended in Atlanta and that he would travel there sometimes, and that is one of the reasons why he could be linked to Melinda's disappearance, but I couldn't confirm where he was actually apprehended. And if you look at this map that I made, it shows the places where the 7 murders occurred. And looking at the map and looking at where Atmore is, they look relatively close. But it's still over 250 miles and over 3.5 hours in a car to get from one area to the other. And since Derrick Todd Lee committed his crimes in such a concentrated area, I personally believe it's less likely that he would venture out so far from the area that he was familiar with. But those are some of the reasons why people believe that could be Derrick Todd Lee who was responsible for Melinda's disappearance. Now, there's actually a second serial killer that investigators believe could be responsible for Melinda's disappearance, and that is Jeremy Brian Jones. Jones was born in April of 1973, making him 19 years old at the time that he committed his first murder and 31 at the time of his last murder of 45-year-old Lisa Nichols in Turnerville, Alabama. Now, Jeremy Brian Jones actually started in Oklahoma and traveled around the country. He murdered people before Melinda went missing as well as after. So Jones's victims were from a vast range of ages, from ages 16 to 45, and ranged from areas of Oklahoma to Atlanta to New Orleans and Alabama. Here's a map of the locations of each of his murders that he has confessed to or has been convicted of or charged of. There is some question as to which murders he actually committed because Jones has confessed to multiple murders since being convicted of Lisa Nichols, and some of his confessions made investigators skeptical of how truthful he was being. For example, in one case of the murder of Patrice Andres in April of 2004. He confessed to this and he told the investigators where to find her body. He told them that he disposed of Patrice's body over a bridge into a river in Douglas County, and massive searches turned up nothing. But then in December of 2005, her skeletal remains were found in a wooded area behind a church in Dawson County, Georgia, about 10 miles away from her salon where she was last seen at. So this discrepancy made people unsure if he really was responsible for her death or not. Though it is hard to say for sure whether or not he killed all of the people on the list, some of the circumstances were similar, which made some of the less likely ones in my head become more likely. So, for example, he confessed to killing a family and lighting their trailer on fire, as well as another time where he supposedly killed a couple and set their home on fire. And DNA evidence, as well as other physical evidence, proved that Jeremy Bryan Jones was guilty of raping Lisa Nichols and shooting her multiple times before setting her home on fire in 2004. But the murder of Amanda Greenwell that he was charged with had very different circumstances. She was stabbed and her neck was broken, and she was found, I believe, in the woods about a month after she disappeared. So it seems like he didn't really have a consistent means of carrying out these murders. It seems like any of the murders he confessed to could likely be true. I don't know if we'll ever really know for sure. Both of them were active in the same time period. Derrick Todd Lee was actually apprehended just weeks after Melinda disappeared, and Jeremy Bryan Jones was apprehended over a year after Melinda disappeared. For someone like Derrick Todd Lee, who committed his crimes exclusively in the Baton Rouge area, it seems unlikely that he would commit a murder so far away from all of the others. But for Jeremy Bryan Jones, it seems more likely because his crimes did span a large area. And I searched the Bay Minette town for different nursing homes, and it seems like there's only one nursing home in the town that's an actual nursing home. It's more on the north side of Bay Minette. So the best route for her to have taken would have been taking 65. So from going back as far as I could on Google Maps, I believe that she stopped at this Chevron station, which is right off the highway, and the way that she would take to get home from the gas station would be just down this road and then down Ewing. I'm not sure how to pronounce this street name. That road is right off of the highway. And so she would just take that all the way down to Kent Road, which then branches off onto her actual road with her 3 neighbors that she has. So it would be so easy for somebody to notice Melinda at the gas station. You know, if she even mentions to somebody how tired she is or anything about just getting off of work, that could definitely pose as an opportunity for someone to take advantage of the fact that she's going home. It's 7 a.m. Most people are at work. It would be a potential opportunity for someone to take advantage of that situation. And if it wasn't somebody that she knew, then the only other person I could think of would be a serial killer who happens to take that same route and may have very well likely been at that gas station at some point in time and saw Melinda. And the exit that Melinda would have gotten off when returning home from work was exactly on the path that Jeremy Bryan Jones more than likely took when he was traveling through these areas and committing these murders. If it is true that Derrick Todd Lee did travel to and from Atlanta to Baton Rouge often, then he could be just as likely to have come across Melinda at this gas station at some point. So there was a couple news articles that said that Troy's son from his previous marriage was at a dentist appointment at the time. I'm not sure if he lived with them at the time. It's not exactly clear in any of the articles. I'm not sure if he lived with his mom or if he lived with Troy and Melinda, but it said that he was at a dentist appointment at this time. And I'm curious if he lived there with them. I can't imagine a dentist appointment taking 8 hours or 9 hours. I don't understand really any of that detail. Like, if he didn't live there, then obviously it doesn't really matter. But if he lived there, wouldn't he have been home at some point? I really am curious to understand the details of where he was the rest of the day after his dentist appointment. I guess that the investigators, after interviewing everyone, weren't able to find somebody who would hurt Melinda. And at first I was kind of skeptical about the serial killer theories because the vast majority of cases like this or murders or missing persons, it's gonna be somebody who knows the victim. Most of the time, it's somebody who is close to the victim who is responsible. And that's unfortunate, but that's statistically the most likely scenario. And so at first I was thinking it's got to be somebody in her family. But if Troy's son wasn't there and he wasn't really supposed to be there and his alibi checks out, then it seems more likely that it could be one of these two serial killers. It's hard for me to pick one theory or not, but it does seem like the majority of the people online, like on web sleuths, and like I said earlier, a lot of the investigators do believe that it is likely one of these serial killers. And the times match up, the areas match up pretty well with where they were at. And so maybe it was. And that's even more heartbreaking because you were just at the wrong place at the wrong time and caught the eye of somebody that horrific. I think that if it wasn't one of those two serial killers, that it has to be somebody who knew Melinda and knew her routine, knew her enough to be able to know that she was going to be home and no one else would be. Now, another theory that I thought of that I don't really think I saw anywhere else online was it could possibly be somebody who was just motivated to rob her and things got out of hand. So they took her with them and harmed her outside of her house. So in this scenario, I would speculate that it could possibly be somebody who is on drugs or is trying to find drugs, maybe going into withdrawal or something, because it just seemed like somebody who was very desperate to find something in that house, and the things that they were looking for, or the places that they were looking, seemed like drawers that could have cash or jewelry or just anything that they could get some quick cash on. I don't believe that like a TV was missing or any big items like that. And so I'm really unsure how much was actually taken. But this case, like I said earlier, it has like so little detail that it's so hard to form a real theory or a real opinion on what it could be. Because even with the case that we went over with Courtney Stoffer, there wasn't really a lot of evidence for her actually going missing when she actually went missing, but there was some very clear people of interest or theories that could have happened or were likely the scenario of what happened, even though there wasn't a lot of evidence. But with this case, there is some evidence that something happened. There is evidence that there was clearly some sort of attack that happened in the home, but that's it. There's no other evidence. I find it strange that her keys were locked in her car. I don't know if that was something that she normally did. I don't know if the car was actually locked with the keys in it or if she just left the keys in it. If that was the case, then I definitely think that that was likely just the normal thing that she did. But with her purse being there and her cell phone, I'm curious as to why the person wouldn't have taken her cell phone if they were looking for cash. But I guess in 2003, cell phones weren't worth as much money then. I don't know. This case is definitely heartbreaking for the family who still doesn't have any closure or know what happened to their mom and their sister and their wife. And it would be great for the family to be able to have closure and find out what actually happened to Melinda. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think may have happened to Melinda. Do you think it was someone she knew? Do you think it was a serial killer? If you think it was a serial killer, which one? Leave your theories in the comments below and we can discuss it more there. So with that, I'm gonna go. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to watch this video and learn more about Melinda's case. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so that you're notified the next time I drop a video, and I will see you next time. Bye.